Hello and welcome to the latest You Are My Boro with myself, Dom Short, and Scott Wilson, both from the Northern Echo, and we're both nursing a little bit of playoff fever, I think, again, after Monday's win and 6 games to go. And I was just looking back before we started at the kind of ups and downs of the last few weeks and how we've approached these videos and pods, and it's kind of been like in the playoff picture, out of the playoff picture, at risk of getting dragged into the relegation picture, safe from the relegation picture, but nothing to play for. Back into the playoff picture, then Blackburn, Southampton, probably too much to ask. And then here we are now, 6 points off, 6 games to play. I don't think there's any doubt now that Boro are in the playoff race, but probably better question to ask is, can they realistically finish in the top 6?
It's been like the hokey-cokey, hasn't it? It's been in, out, and shaking all about. They're in the playoff race. I mean, there's no doubt about that. 6 points off with 6 games to play. You're in the equation. I think what's counting against Boro is the fact that the 2 sides above them have a game in hand. I think that's a factor. I think the fact that 3 of the last 6 games are against Hull, Ipswich and Leeds has to be factored into the equation. We'll probably get to the specific games later on in the video. My gut feeling is they're going to fall short. I think it's too much to ask. I think they're probably going to have to win 5 of the last 6. I think they're certainly going to have to win 4 of the last 6. And then they're still going to be hoping that teams above them, Norwich, Coventry, Hull, drop further points along the way. So it feels like too big an ask, but I think what you've got to say is, as you've alluded to there, Dom, from where we were a month ago, just to have got themselves back into this is a pretty decent effort by Michael Carrick and his players. I think they deserve quite a lot of credit for the 6-game run that they've put together and the fact that we're having this conversation at all. So, yeah, excitement. Clearly, the excitement will build even more if they can beat Swansea at the weekend. Ultimately, I still feel they're going to fall a little bit short.
Do you think? So? We've got Isaiah Jones today in the paper and online today talking about how sometimes there's the benefit in being the hunter, and I think that undoubtedly benefited Boro last season when they were chasing Sheffield United down. There was a stage, wasn't there, when Boro had all the momentum and Sheffield United was shaking, and it all felt very nervous down at that end. In Boro's position now, are you free of pressure because there's nothing to lose, or is there loads of pressure because you can't afford to slip up?
No, I think to a large extent you're free of pressure, because I think hand on heart, no Boro fan is really expecting them to get there. Or they're hoping, but there's not an expectation, is there? And it's not like for the whole of this season, Boro have been in the top 6. They've been nailed on for a playoff place. And if they were to suddenly drop out of it, that would be a disaster. We're not in that situation. So I do think to a degree, the pressure's off, and so the shackles can come off a little bit because of that. I think the fundamental difference to last season is last season it was a straight shootout, wasn't it? It was Boro or Sheffield United for that second spot. You were going for one team. You knew that what you did was going to be impacted by whatever Sheffield United did, and vice versa. The difference this time, as I've said, is you're part of a group of 4 or 5 teams who are all going for it. And so not only do you need to have a really, really strong end to the season, you also need at least 3 other teams to probably not win 3 of their last 6. By the laws of probability and the way they've been playing so far this season, there's a good chance that one of Norwich, Coventry or Hull will string a set of results together that really mean Boro probably have to win all 6 to get there. And that then becomes really, really difficult, obviously.
Well, I was just about to ask that, because Boro on 58 points now. There's 18 points to play for. My question was going to be, what do you think's needed points wise? What would Boro have to do? Do you think they'd have to win all 6? Do you think 5 wins and a draw? I mean, obviously all 6.
I think anything less than 4 wins is clearly impossible. I think that 4 wins, you are relying then on all of the teams above you to have a major hiccup. Now, that's not impossible, but it's unlikely. 5 wins, and all of a sudden, you're still asking those teams above you to slip up, but not to the extent. And I think 5 wins probably gets you just about there.
That's 73
Clearly,
points.
if you win all 6,
possible point, yeah.
Yeah, if you win all 6 or 5 and a draw, then you're getting to the kind of points total where suddenly the teams above you are going to have to put together a pretty decent run themselves to beat you. So it feels like 5 wins is probably a minimum requirement.
We are definitely in the territory of how many points are required to make the Championship's top 6 type pieces of content that we've all done in the past.
We certainly are.
But if Boro were to get 15 points now, say 15, and got 73, if you get 73 points and miss out on the top 6, you're unlucky. You're unfortunate with that tally.
It's a funny season though, because we're in the scenario where the way that Leeds, Ipswich, and Leicester are playing, there's a decent chance that one of those teams could get 100 points and yet still finish third. and like you say, you're potentially getting into the early 70s anyway and missing out on the playoffs. It's just been that kind of season. If Boro can win 5 of the last 6, they will have a really good puncher's chance, won't they? But it does feel like that's the kind of realms we're probably talking about, because you've got to win 2 just to get level, if you know what I mean, in terms of the points that you're making up at the moment. So you've then probably got to win at least another 3 on the assumption that one of the 3 teams above you will win 3 of the last 6.
We'll have a look at and a chat about Boro's fixtures, but if we look at the teams who are in the picture, Cardiff 11th on 56 points. I think we're probably discounting them. They're not going to finish in the top 6. So you've got Norwich 6th, 64, Coventry 7th, 60, Preston 8th, 59, Hull, Boro 9th, 58, Hull 10th, 58. Coventry, Preston, and Hull have all got 7 games to play rather than 6. Who are the big dangers there? And the funny one for me are Preston, because when I'm thinking of Boro's rivals, I'm thinking of Norwich, Coventry, and Hull. I've discounted Preston all season, and I'm continuing to discount them. And I might be made to look daft there, but I don't know who are the big threats for you. I mean, clearly Norwich are the team in prime position.
So I've thought all season that Coventry would make the playoffs.
Yeah, you called that.
And I still probably think that that's the way it's going with the game in hand. Clearly, the wild card with Coventry is the FA Cup run. The semi-final and the prospect that they could even get to a final is going to be a factor in that. Now, Norwich have been playing well for 3 months now, haven't they? After having had that pretty shaky start, they've been pretty consistently solid for the last 2 or 3 months. Good at Carrow Road. Sargent's obviously playing out of his skin, getting a load of goals. I struggle to look past those 2. Although, as you rightly say, Preston have been overlooked all season. And Hull, while they're having a bit of a wobble, are very much still there. But if you ask me, I think it's between Norwich and Coventry. I've felt Coventry all the way through. The only slight hesitation I have there is I do think this FA Cup weekend will affect them. But I would go for one of those 2. I think West Brom are clearly there. Southampton are clearly there. One of the top 3 are going to drop into it. It's which is the other team. At the moment, I just have Coventry ahead of Norwich, but I think it'll be one of those 2.
And I'm sure. I think Norwich are clearly the favourites because they've got a 4-point buffer. I know Coventry have got a game in hand, so it feels like the easy answer. But I think Norwich are probably solid enough to get enough results.
They don't feel like a side who is suddenly going to lose 4 of the last 6, do they?
No. No, so I think if I had to pick the 6th now, I'd go with Norwich. Back in January, I liked the look of Hull, but it's funny because in January Hull was seen as the team of, well, they're having a right go, and they did have a right go. And from what I'm told, some of the money they threw about in January to sign the type of players they did, Ryan Giles being one of them, was quite substantial. And yet it always felt like really bold move, because it is the type of season where, and I'm not saying you can't have ambition, but even if Hull did get in the top 6, it'd still be such a long shot for them to win those those playoffs because of the strength of the teams above. So it felt, I don't know whether misguided's the right word, but it felt kind of a strange move in January anyway, I thought. But I am surprised by how they've fallen off. And obviously Boro are there.
Haven't they?
Yeah, I watched them at Leeds on Friday night, and they played well for long stages, but obviously ultimately lost that game. And obviously Boro there next week, which leads us on to the fixtures. I'm sure everyone watching or listening knows them inside out anyway. But Swansea home Saturday, Hull, Ipswich away, Leeds home, Cardiff away, Watford home. I was going to say, where's the dangers? But the obvious answer there is Ipswich and Leeds. But is that the case? Because you're probably, your eyes and thoughts are immediately drawn to those three games. But is that just assuming that Boro are going to take care of business in the games against Swansea, Cardiff and Watford? For Boro to stand any chance, you look at those three games and think they need to get 9 points from those games.
Yeah, and the dynamic of the whole season has been, as we've mentioned countless times on these vids, that Boro have generally played better and got better results against the teams in the top half of the table rather than the teams in the bottom half who look to stifle, play a low block, say to Boro, right, have the ball, come and break us down, and then hit Boro on the break. That's happened time and time again. So, with that in mind, you're right. I don't think it can be assumed that Swansea home, Cardiff away, Watford home automatically ends up with 9 points, because those are the type of games this season that Boro have not been winning consistently enough. And if Boro do miss out, it's clearly the games against those type of teams, particularly at home at the Riverside, where they have lost games and dropped points, that's going to be causing the damage. That said, I still think the way that they're playing, Ipswich away and Leeds at home, is a really, really tough double-header to think you can take 4 or 6 points out of that. I mean, Ipswich at Portman Road have been exceptional all season. That is going to be a game where they're right in the mix of it. They need to win that game desperately. Then you've got Leeds, who at the moment just seem to be a juggernaut. Okay, it's at the Riverside. Yes, you know, as we said, Boro have had decent results against these teams all season. But for me, Hull away, Ipswich away, Leeds at home, if you're going to tell me that Boro are going to get 6 points from those games, I'd snap your hand off now and gamble on the fact that you can take 7 or 9 from your other three.
When that Leeds game first got moved to the Monday night, my instinctive reaction was the prospect of thinking, my God, that could be a Leeds promotion party at the Riverside, similar to Burnley was last season. And yet now, if you spin it, if Boro were to say, probably even take 6 points from the 3 games before then from Swansea, Hull and Ipswich, you'd still, if you took 6 points from the next 3 games, you'd still be in there within touch and distance. That promises to be on a Monday night an absolute belter, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because there's a good chance, just because the teams keep on winning, there's a good chance that simply because they're playing last, Leeds go into that game in 3rd position, desperately needing to win it. Boro, like you say, you'd like to think, are in a scenario where a win gets them right amongst it with 2 more games to go. So yeah, you know, that could be the game of the season at the Riverside, couldn't it? You know, leave aside the cup stuff. Obviously the Chelsea game stands alone, but in terms of championship matches, that's got every prospect of being the game of the season at the Riverside. You know, even dare I say it, just the prospect of Boro scuppering Leeds as automatic promotion hopes would whet the appetite for a fair few fans, I think.
The one that comes to mind there is, in terms of scuppering title hopes, I think Mowbray was in charge when Southampton rocked up to win the title, and Marouane Zamama free kick ruined the party. I'm sure Boro dropped point. It was like a typical Boro week. We'd have to check this. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I'm sure Boro dropped points at home at Doncaster or something like that. Maybe was it a 0-0 with Doncaster the week before? That looked to be it. And then they beat Southampton to set up that last game where they went to Watford and needed to win. And I think it was at Cardiff, Crystal Palace. Yeah. Anyway, Chef Wed, you were there on Monday. We're a few days on, so we'll just have a quick look over it. But kind of verdict from there, big performers. What were your takeaways coming away from the Riverside on Monday night?
I think the major takeaway was how desperate Sheffield Wednesday were. And that's not to denigrate what Boro did. We'll get to that in a minute. You can only beat what's put in front of you, the classic cliche. But my God, Sheffield Wednesday were terrible. Absolutely terrible. To the extent that Roll in his post-match press conference, I'm sure we've all kind of seen and heard, just absolutely, not good enough, absolutely disgraceful. I can talk about systems, whatever. If players aren't just prepared to run around, that's the absolute basics. If we play like that, we can forget about survival, all that kind of stuff. So kind of fair play to him for not trying to hide behind that. But Sheffield Wednesday were terrible. Haven't got into the game thinking Sheffield Wednesday will stay up. It'll be Huddersfield and Birmingham that go, because I think Sheffield Wednesday have enough about them. That game would make you absolutely reassess that verdict. So that's one thing. In terms of Boro, slow start, grew into the first half. I thought the first goal comes at a good time for them. They were just starting to build a head of steam up Boro. But that first goal knocks the stuffing out of Sheffield Wednesday, means that you're on the front foot from the word go in the second half. And then the second half, to be fair, I thought Boro played really well. Thought that they just got a hold of the game. I thought Barlaser and O'Brien, two of the much better games that they've had for Boro this season, admittedly with the caveat that Sheffield Wednesday's lack of any kind of pressure or closing down meant that every time Barlaser got the ball, he could get his head up, take however long he wanted, pick whatever pass he wanted and play it. And that's when he's good, I think, isn't it? That's Barlaser's game. But he certainly looked very good. Jones played well, got his goal, obviously. Latalat didn't score, but still led the line pretty effectively, I thought. Thought Ayling had a good game. So, yeah, good performances right the way through, really, in the second half. As I say, I thought the two central midfielders stood out, but with the caveat that they were pretty much allowed to do whatever they wanted.
We've talked about this a few times with Barlaser, because I was going to say, you hope a performance like that can be a springboard for him, but there's been one or two of those, hasn't there, over the last
year and like I said, they've generally come when he's been able to have the time and space to dictate play. That's clearly what he's good at. But you either have to come up against a side like Sheff Wed, who are just going to stand off and let you do it, and then still be so disorganized at the back that you can pick passes even though they're trying to block off space, or you need to establish the kind of platform in the rest of midfield to afford him that time and space to do it. And you're right, Boro haven't really done that enough for Barlaser, and in the tougher games, Barlaser hasn't quite been able to seize control of things in the way that he did on Monday. I think that's probably fair.
And Barlaser was in the midfield because obviously Johnny Howson played at the back again. And when we were talking on Monday night, you were talking about how Howson could have a future as a Premier League defender because of the way he plays and his reading of the game.
Well, it's funny, you watch any kind of football in the last couple of years, but even more so, I think Premier League football and central defenders now, so much of their game is getting the ball off the keeper or getting the ball off another midfielder or a centre half under a reasonable amount of pressure, and not just launching it, but picking a pass to either a fullback or feeding it into a midfielder or whatever. Howson is brilliant at that and was brilliant at that on Monday. Every time Johnny Howson got the ball, you felt 100% secure that he was not only going to keep it and not give it away, but that he use it pretty effectively to either spread the play or get an attack going or whatever. And I just think that increasingly, clearly, if you're playing Johnny Howson at centre-half over the long term in the Championship, in particular, your worry is, well, he's going to get bullied. Balls are going to be raining into the box. He's not big enough. He's not muscular enough. He's going to get knocked around. Can he win those 50-50 challenges? Can he win headers against players that are a foot taller from him? Yes, centre-half still need to do that to a degree, but the days when that was the be-all and end-all for a central defender, even in the Championship, are increasingly going behind you, I think. So Howson's skill set, I think he could definitely be a centre half. Maybe he'd need a Fry or a Lenihan or someone like that alongside him in the longer term, who, if you like, could do the dirty work and take the job of going up against a muscular striker if there is one in the opposition ranks. But I wouldn't worry about Howson playing at centre half for a prolonged period. I really wouldn't. I think he's taken to it like a duck to water. And like I say, I think he's got the skill set to enable him to do that if Boro need him to.
And I think next to Howson, Matt Clark, I completely take what you're saying there about how the kind of role of the defenders changed. But watching Clark at Southampton on Good Friday, and I've thought this, obviously he's played a major role in the last few months.
Yeah.
He's a defender first, isn't he, Matt Clark? So he's clearly taken on board exactly what Michael Carrick wants from him. And I actually think he's underrated. That side of his game is underrated. I think he maybe looks uncomfortable doing it at times, but that doesn't mean he is uncomfortable. If you get me, I think actually if you look at his output, it's good. But the block he made, I mean, the tackle he made with his head at Southampton was remarkable. And you get the impression he's one of those defenders who the satisfaction he'll get from a clean sheet or from he is a defender first, isn't he? And what an important player he's been in the last few weeks and months.
And Boro's defensive record in this run has been absolutely sensational, hasn't it? I mean, from a side that was shipping goals at a reasonably alarming rate for kind of big chunks of the season. We've talked a long time about why hasn't the defense been able to do what it was doing last season? Well, they've conceded 1 goal in the last 5 matches, and Matt Clark has been a big part of that. He's been really reliable. I think when he first came back into the team, the consistency level of his performances wasn't there, but it certainly has been.
Which is understandable, isn't it?
Exactly. It's perfectly understandable given how long he was out for. And the fact he was coming into a side that generally wasn't defending that well either, full stop. But he's been so consistent and reliable in the last month. And like I say, his performances, probably more than anyone else's, are a massive, massive factor why Boro have been able to string together this incredibly improved defensive display and all of a sudden don't look like conceding the kind of sloppy goals that were their kind of Achilles heel for much of the first half of the season.
On the subject of clean sheets, Seny Dieng obviously back in goal, and this morning he's been linked with the Telegraph have reported that Newcastle, Ipswich, Crystal Palace and clubs overseas, including Sevilla, are all keeping an eye on Dieng and have scouted him over recent weeks. What are your kind of thoughts on that and thoughts on Dieng's position going into the summer?
Yeah, it probably doesn't really surprise me because I do think he's one of the best goalkeepers in the Championship, and he's a modern breed of goalkeeper, isn't he? Who's comfortable with the ball at his feet. His distribution's really good. He's not fazed by being the kind of sweeper keeper. All of those are reasons why Michael Carrick went for him in the summer, and he's ticked all of those boxes, I think. So it doesn't hugely surprise me. I mean, Boro would want to keep him. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Why would you want to get rid of one of the best goalkeepers in the Championship? That said, this is probably going to be a summer where a slight degree of wheeler dealing is going to happen. There are going to be players coming in. There are almost certainly going to be players going out. In general, a Championship goalkeeper is easier to replace, certainly, than, say, a centre-forward or something like that. So I think it's one of those where, to a degree, it might depend on what kind of offers come in. It feels like one that in an ideal world you definitely need to keep, but it doesn't feel like one that you'd absolutely have to if the money started becoming silly. Now we might not get to that level. Let's see. At the moment, it's kind of paper talk, but there is clearly interest around that. We've kind of heard little bits of suggestions that he's one of the players that is being quite heavily scouted at Boro this season. Certainly not the only one. I think it's an interesting one. In an ideal world, you keep Seny Dieng because I do think he's one of the best players, one of the best goalkeepers in the Championship. But I think he's easier to replace than some other players. Put it like that. What would you think?
I think first things first. I mean, the report. I think it was about £2 million he signed for, and the report, the Telegraph report this morning says that if he was to leave, then you'd be looking at least double that. First things first. Again, it's another pat on the back for the recruitment team, I think, to be 8-9 months down the line from signing someone, having Premier League clubs and European clubs like Sevilla looking at him and talk of doubling your money. Now, that's without knowing kind of any more than what I've read this morning. I haven't spoken to anyone about it. you look at the options who Carrick has beneath Dieng at the minute. Tom Glover. I thought when Tom Glover came in, when Dieng was out injured and then went away to AFCON, he had a really solid start, but then kind of lost his way a little bit, didn't he? And there's no doubt that he's not as assured, or it didn't look as assured with him in goal as it did Dieng. The other one to factor in, and clearly it's a big jump to consider him as a potential number one next season, but Sol Brynn's had another really good loan season this year out at Leyton Orient. He was excellent last year at Swindon. I think he got their player of the season. Leyton Orient, he's impressed again this year for a team that have done well. I spoke to Sol. It was probably about this time last year, interview when he was at Swindon, and he made it absolutely clear his dream was to be Boro's number one. He signed a new contract in the summer. Now, it's a big jump to consider him. What on the other hand, what I'm thinking is, Carrick had a look at him. Boro had a look at him last year and then signed 2 senior goalkeepers before sending him out on loan. So it feels like a big leap of faith to see Brynn as a number one next season or knocking on the door. But I think he's certainly one who Boro and Carrick will have another look at with another year of experience at a level higher than what he was at previously.
I take on board exactly what you're saying, but I do think a little bit with it. If it's not going to be next season, when is it going to be?
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the risk with Sol Brynn is that he becomes another Ainsley Pears, where he's always there in the background for Boro. Everybody's talking about him as a future goalkeeper, but his route to the first team is constantly blocked. He goes off elsewhere, and in the end, he establishes himself, as Pears done, as an absolutely nailed-on championship goalkeeper somewhere else. It would be a shame. 3 or 4 years. Go on.
Sorry, because I was going to say, I spoke to Ian Hart, who's Sol Brynn's agent, a couple of weeks ago about it, and with the story, you'll find it on the Echo site from a couple of weeks ago, and Hart was saying then what you're saying, really, that Anthony Patterson got his chance at Sunderland, James Trafford got his chance, keepers need to get the chance. So at some stage, whether it's this summer or if Brynn was to establish himself as a number one at Boro or elsewhere in the Championship, he needs a chance. He needs to get a chance, doesn't he?
Yes, and I do understand the reticence because he is young. He's had good loan spells, but he's never done it in the Championship. All of that I understand, but I think it would be disappointing after Pears if in 3 years' time we're looking at Sol Brynn as an established Championship goalkeeper, but because he's left Boro to move to another Championship club who have given him that chance. I think that would be a disappointment, wouldn't it? That it's kind of happened twice with 2, really promising young keepers who, let's be honest, Boro put a lot of time and effort into through their academy, but don't get that chance at Boro. Now, like you say, would you want Brynn to start the season? Well, I still come back to, if not now, probably whenever. So I think he definitely deserves to be in there in pre-season with a genuine chance of starting next season as Boro's number one. Although otherwise, where's his development going? What is the plan for him? You might as well sell this summer if you're not going to give him a chance this year.
And if there's nothing in the Dieng thing, if Dieng is number one next season and Tom Glover continues as number two, then at that stage you'd look at it and the path for Brynn you would think would be blocked, and then Boro might be forced into that position.
Might well be forced. Yeah.
If Dieng was to go, then there's clearly a decision to be made there. We'll see. Michael Carrick speaking to we're recording this on Thursday morning, and Carrick speaking to the press. Scott's over there at Rockcliffe on Thursday afternoon. I'm sure that's something Carrick will be asked about, the Dieng situation. Just another news line. We've been here before. Neil Warnock's retired.
Has he? Has he? When?
Yeah. He did a couple of interviews yesterday, TalkSport and BBC Radio Devon.
Yeah.
He'd been in for the Plymouth job, or he'd gone for the Plymouth job. I mean, when Ian Foster went, I thought that's got Warnock's mitts written all over it.
I'll tell you what. As soon as that news broke, it was, well, we all know what's happening here, don't we?
Yeah.
I can even get back so Sharon can make me tea. But it's not. Sadly, it's not to be.
Are you surprised? So Plymouth have appointed Neil Dewsnip, who I think is their director of football until the end of the season, and a coach who was there. Clearly, we have absolutely no insight into the workings of Plymouth Argyle. But from the outside looking in, are you surprised? They're appointing a place above the relegation zone. I think they've lost 8 of the last 11. Are you surprised that they didn't go for Warnock?
Yes, I am, to be perfectly honest. And like you say, with the caveat that we don't have a clue what's going on at Plymouth. So, that we have to hold our hands up with that. Who they brought in might well be the next big thing. They might have had this planned for months and months and months. I don't know. From the outside looking in, Plymouth look like a club who are hurtling towards relegation and just need something to get them 2 wins between now and the end of the season. And I would have thought that the whole kind of, we all know what goes wrong with Neil Warnock coming into your football club. Yes, didn't really work for him up in Aberdeen, did it? But I still thought, well, he'll go in there, he'll get the fans behind him, he'll make it into, it's now or never, it's one big push. And in some ways, given his Cornwall kind of links, what a way to bow out that would have been for him. It's a shame that he hasn't had the opportunity to do that. But Plymouth obviously don't want to go down that route, and Neil's decided, right, that this is finally time. There's going to be no more. I thought it would have been a no-brainer, but like you say, we don't know what's going on down there. Maybe this is part of a much bigger, wider plan. But Plymouth are in big trouble. For all that I've just said, Sheffield Wednesday were absolutely terrible. Plymouth's form is unbelievably bad. So I've got to admit, I don't know offhand what games they have left. That is not part of my championship knowledge at the moment. Are you looking at it?
Yeah, they're at Rotherham. They're at Rotherham on Friday night.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure in saying Rotherham could go down, so Warnock could have gone and relegated Rotherham on Friday, and then they're at home to QPR, and the other 2 teams currently below Plymouth, Huddersfield, where he started the season in charge, and Sheffield Wednesday, where so it was absolutely
it really would have been the ideal storm, wouldn't it?
If ever a script,
it goes without saying that from Plymouth games are biggie then, isn't it? Goodness me.
Yeah.
So that's tomorrow night.
Yeah, Friday night. Yeah, Rotherham, Plymouth.
Wow.
I wonder why that was picked a few weeks ago for Sky coverage.
Yeah.
Swansea then for Boro on Saturday. They've won 1 of their last 5, that being the game against Cardiff.
Cardiff, yeah.
Which will do them, I suppose. They've had a funny old season though, haven't they? They've had a disappointing season, really.
They have really. Yeah, they have really. It's been a bit of a nothing. Again, speaking from the outside, not knowing the intricacies of exactly what's been going on there. But yeah, they will have had a disappointing season. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the Championship is the kind of classic league where even at this stage of the season, there's hardly a club with nothing to play for. Surely Swansea are one of those clubs with nothing to play for. And I don't think it's a coincidence, like you said, that their one positive result in the last 5 has been the derby against Cardiff, which kind of motivates itself, doesn't it? I think it's got classic, typical Boro written all over it. But Boro win this game, surely. If they show anything like the kind of professionalism is not the right word because they're professional all the time, but the level of intensity and the attitude that they displayed on Monday against Sheff Wed, Swansea will not be as bad as Sheff Wed, don't get me wrong. But if Boro mirror all of that, I think they beat Swansea. Another 2-0? I'll go another 2-0.
Yeah, I was going to say another 2-0. Yeah, I was going to say another 2-0. My fear is the obvious kind of fear really is having got themselves in this position that they then slip up. But no, I don't know. I think it has the look of being a good game for Boro. I think so. I don't think Boro have had enough of those. Well, they haven't had enough of those professional, comfortable home wins like the one against Sheffield Wednesday on Monday. Yeah, I fancy a home win. And you're at Sunderland this weekend, just to finish. Now, you were talking about...
You're at Boro, aren't you? I'm Sunderland, yeah.
You were talking about Danny Roll's post-match blast on Monday. Mike Dodgers was quite something at Sunderland. Crap, pathetic, completely unacceptable. He rolled them all out. And they're a team now with nothing. You're talking about the game with nothing to play for. That was... that was quite the blast.
They are a team with nothing to play for, but the rate at which that's unraveling at Sunderland, and we could go into this forever. I've just written a column on it, funnily enough, for that's just gone online now and for tomorrow's paper. I know this is a Boro vid, but if you want a little bit of an insight into what's going on at Sunderland, maybe that'll give you it. I think this risks massively damaging Sunderland next season because there's no manager. There's question marks over a whole host of senior players this summer. the relationship between the fans and the kind of ownership and the club in general has fractured massively. They need to sort out what they're doing for the long term. They need a manager in, because at the moment, the sense of drift there is remarkable. And going back to where we were a month ago, Boro could have been in that position. I know we were talking about being dragged into the relegation battle. Hand on heart, I don't think either of us really thought Boro were going to go down. But there was a very definite risk of the last month of this season just becoming an absolute drift to nothingness. And that risks its own sense of damage, I think, for the long term, because I think that whatever happens now with Boro, even if they don't get in, I think that there's been enough kind of positivity and momentum and a sense that there is a squad there to be built from, that's going to carry over into the summer. And it's going to be much easier to get excited about what Boro might be capable of next season than it is with Sunderland.
And just finally, before we wrap up, the reason I kind of came onto that, what are your standout memories of furious post-match press conference blasts from managers? Do any immediately spring to mind?
Oh, that's a good one. Strachan was always sarky, wasn't it? It wasn't really blasts. It was sarky.
Karanga was twisty. Karanga, there was a couple of slams from Karanga, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I remember
towards the end tended to be though twisting about recruitment and what he had and what he didn't have, rather than the actual players. I'm trying to think of Boro managers actually hammering the players. No, I mean, not a blast, and it wouldn't class the blast bracket, but I always remember Southgate after they'd conceded, was it 7 at Arsenal? As captain, not as manager. As
it was a young team, wasn't it? Andrew Taylor. It was.
Yeah, and I just remember him coming out and kind of the way he conducted himself after that, in terms of holding his hands up and saying, "Look, this is utterly, utterly unacceptable for a club like Boro," but doing it in a kind of constructive way. Even at that point, I found that really impressive. And obviously, he's gone on and done everything he's done since. That kind of stands out. Yeah, but managers actually blasting the play. I'm sure Strachan will have done, but he'll have done it, like I say, in a really kind of sarky, why are you asking me this? This isn't my fault kind of way. Passing the buck almost, rather than trying to do it constructively.
There was one a couple of weeks ago when I was at Birmingham. Mark Venus had come in afterwards, and Venus was really down, and it was obviously talking about the situation and saying they need help. At that stage, obviously Mowbray's situation was unknown and when he'd be going back in. But then John Ruddy came in afterwards, and I was just sat tapping my stuff away, but kind of like attention was drawn because Ruddy hammered him, and he was talking about, we're carrying too many players, and yeah, that's one of them where when a player's saying stuff like that and going back into the dressing room.
I'll tell you a really good one, actually. One has absolutely leapt into my mind. So, Ovid, Boro at home to Coventry.
Oh, I know where we're going, yeah.
Don't you? Were you there for that as well?
I don't know. I don't think I was there, but I think I was told about it.
So in COVID, the kind of the layout of everything changed, and where the press room is now that we're in after the game, where all the post-match interviews and that took place, became the away dressing room, because you obviously had to have social distances. The players had to come out different bits of the tunnel, all of that. And so we as the press were in this little, what's a kind of little mix zone area that backs directly onto that. So you can hear, because it's a very quite partition wall, everything that's going on in there. So after the game, Robbins comes in, clearly doesn't know that we as the press are literally just through the other side of this partition wall, and absolutely tears the strip off his Coventry players. Pathetic, spineless. I never want to see that lack of effort. You've let yourselves down. You've let me down. Some of you won't be playing next week. All the classic manager throwing the hairdryer treatment, all of that. And then about a minute later, the door opens. He walks through onto the stage. So, Mark, what did you make of that game? Well, you know, the one thing you can't say about this group, you can't question their effort and their character. You know, yes, it's been a disappointing day, but we're a team. I'm never going to say anything against it. There's a little insight into what actually goes on when you hear these manager quotes.
I was just about to say, you mean to say that managers are fobbing us off and not telling us what they're really
exactly doing? That. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Let's hope Michael Carrick doesn't do that at Rockcliffe this afternoon. Well, thanks a lot, Scott. As I said, it is Carrick's press conference this afternoon, so we'll have full reaction from that in the build-up to Saturday's game against Swansea, and then obviously coverage and analysis over the course of the weekend. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and do leave a comment as well if there's anything you want us to discuss in the coming weeks. And if you're listening on podcast, then rate and review there as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week.